Hi, guys. So today I want to talk about our inverted straddle position, a position in aerial that is so often overlooked, that isn't coached properly, that people tend to skip training because we consider this a transitional movement rather than its own skill. And this is something that actually creates problems for people further down the line when they want to come to work on things like straight arm inverts, flares, beats, and even meat hooks. So there are two issues with this movement that I think causes it to be overlooked. Number one is that for some people, this is a very, very easy position to hit. If you have the right body proportions, this will be very easy. And it also depends on where your weight is distributed on your body, which will impact your center of gravity, which will again make this hard or easy. So I'm a great example. I have very long arms and a long spine, and I have quite short legs. But it means that more of my weight is actually in that long lever of my spine and my arms. I also don't carry a ton of weight on my hips and bum. Now, I definitely have a bum, but I don't carry a ton of weight there. I'm actually more top heavy. Like, I have quite broad shoulders and a large rib cage. And so for me, hitting this position feels very easy because I feel like I have more weight at the bottom of the position. And so my legs and my hips feel very light and they feel very easy to hold there. Now, if I was more bottom heavy, carrying more weight in my hips, bum, or legs, this would be much harder because essentially there is more weight for the lever of my arms to support, but further up. It also means that for some people, it's very hard to keep their hips in place there and to find that stacked position simply because of the shape of their body. If you have short arms, this can also be a challenging movement because, again, it's a shorter lever that's having to support your entire body weight. And the length of legs will have an impact on this as well. But again, it will depend on what the rest of our body proportions are as to how much that impacts us. So I have quite short legs, but again, because my arms and spine are long, it's relatively easy for me to hold myself in place, despite the fact that my legs aren't super long. The second reason that this gets overlooked is because for a lot of people, if we are transitioning through that straddle to then get onto the equipment, we actually can do that without hitting the position at all, right? We can invert, not get our hips all the way up to the bar, but still catch the bar with our legs. And then we're hoxed onto the equipment and ready to sit up and do the next exercise. It is the same with a trapeze. It's even the same on verticals. And especially if you invert, catch your foot, and then kind of shuffle the foot until you've caught the back of the knee on the equipment, like you can invert and hox onto the equipment without actually hitting the top of your straddle. So these are the two reasons why it gets overlooked, because for some people it's very, very difficult to hold. And so they just don't bother with it. They'll find the easiest workaround of just getting to the hocks as quickly as possible. And for other people, it just looks so easy that we assume that everyone with a base level of strength should be able to do this position. There are two main skills that I actually coach aerialists on. One is a straight arm invert and the other is a meat hook. And now both of these drills, they're not beginner, they're probably not even intermediate. I would describe them as fairly advanced, even though you can argue that a straight arm invert is foundational in the sense that it is the base skill for a lot of harder exercises. They still require a lot of strength and a lot of technique that are very specific to the skill. But if you can't support yourself in a really strong straddle, you are going to struggle so much with both of these. The reason being, to complete any sort of invert, we need to be able to pull to the top of the invert in a very stable and strong way. Otherwise, you're simply going to get stuck. So you won't be able to finish the movement. And then with meat hooks, that straddle is actually the starting position. With a meat hook, you need to keep your hips high by your wrists as you transition from the straddle into the meat hook. And so again, if you can't even hold the two-arm straddle position with your hips up, you're going to have a really hard time keeping your body in the right position pulling through the upper back in the correct way and actually hitting the meat hook with good form. So, what are the pieces that are actually missing from this particular exercise? What we need to understand is that we are trying to hit a stacked position. We want our hips on top of our shoulders. Now, because our arms in the way, they're not literally going to be directly on top of our shoulders, but you'll be able to see the difference here. In one position is very stacked, like my spine is straight. There's a slight anterior pelvic tilt so that I can have my legs parallel to the ground, but it's only slight compared to if my back is rounded and my pelvis is tucked under and my legs are kind of collapsed. Now, again, I can hold this position because I have super long arms and I have the strength to stay there. But unless you've actually like trained this is not going to feel like a stable position. It's also not a position I will stay in for any particular reason, but I move through it when I'm doing any kind of invert. But hopefully you can see the difference here. So to create this position, we want to be engaging the upper back. So we want to be thinking about squeezing the shoulder blades together, pushing the chest forwards, and almost externally rotating the shoulders. Now, if we're hanging on a bar, we're not actually going to externally rotate at the shoulder, but I'm very much thinking about trying to open the shoulder and chest. So sometimes a slight kind of external rotation or pullback of the shoulders can be super helpful as well to support the upper back. My spine and core are very active because I've got a slight arch in my lower back. And then I'm also actively trying to think about tension through my legs. So I don't want my legs to be floppy. I want my legs to be actively engaged. So if we go through this as a very quick checklist, I'm in a hang, so I'm working my grip strength. I'm holding on to the equipment, making sure I stay there. My upper back is engaged, squeezing the shoulder blades together. My shoulders are slightly externally rotated. My my back is slightly arched so that I can have a small anterior pelvic tilt to allow me to get my legs relatively parallel to the ground. My core is engaged to support that position of my spine. My legs are very, very engaged to hold them in the right position. Like if I don't have that active engagement, maybe they will sink down if I'm very flexible, or maybe they will lift up if that feels like a more comfortable position. So I'm actively trying to hold that parallel straddle. So everything I've just described there is pretty much working my entire body. This is why this is not a rest position, and this is why it is so frustrating that it gets overlooked, because if we don't train it, then we won't get strong here, and then we will struggle with more advanced movements. What I have found, the more aerialists that I have worked with, is that often the limitation is coming from the upper back. Like, we just are not taught that we need to squeeze the shoulder blades together. It's a simple change, but if you don't understand how to recruit the muscles in that position in that way, then why would you do that automatically? You're just not going to. So, regardless of how strong somebody is or how stable the straddle position is, I will always have people working on that upper back strength, that squeezing of the shoulder blades with other movements so that they can more easily recruit it in the top of their straddle. And I'm going to share some of my favorite drills for this that you can try as well if this is something you want to work towards. So, drill number one is our horizontal ring row. I can't stress how fantastic this exercise is. Now, I know it's a bent arm drill. We're not doing this with straight arms, so it's a little bit different than if we were in the air in our straddle. But this is one of the easiest exercises to teach somebody to understand how to engage their upper back in a pull. I do this with feet on the floor and knees bent so that I can create a kind of horizontal tabletop position with my body. I also like this position because it allows me to squeeze the glutes a little bit, have a little bit of hip extension to support the pull. And then you'll see I am trying to pull the rings right up to my chest. And the only way to do that, to finish the top of that pull, is to squeeze my upper back together. Exercise number two is this single arm scapular pull. Now, I absolutely love this drill because it is done with straight arms. You could do this with two arms together at the same time, but the reason why I teach it one arm at a time is because it allows you to build strength in each side of the body without compensating with your stronger side. It's a really fantastic drill if meat hooks are a goal because this teaches you how to squeeze one shoulder blade at a time, essentially. So again, I'm in a horizontal position, and I know for meat hooks we are vertical, but this still will translate if you train this like this on the floor. My body is horizontal and I've created that bent leg tabletop position again. I keep the arm completely straight and I make sure that the shoulder is directly under my wrist. The floating shoulder needs to stay parallel to the floor the whole time. So I'm making sure that I don't drop that down to the floor or lift it up. I don't want to be twisting my body. And then I simply try and squeeze the shoulder blade of the supporting arm that is hanging from the equipment. And I move in and out of that position to build strength, body awareness, and control. Exercise number 3 is a single arm bent over row. Now, again, it's really helpful to be able to not just pull our body weight, but also train strength and conditioning where we are pulling external objects like weights. It just gives you a different way of building strength and understanding how to engage the muscles and control parts of the body. So this is also really nice because like the single arm scapular pull, it works on each side of the body individually, so there's no compensation. It also focuses on pulling the shoulder back into a bit more extension because we are pulling the weight to our hip. So it's a slightly different position than when we're doing ring rows. And again, it works on recruiting those upper back muscles and the lats at the same time. So I have an initial squeeze of my lats to set up, then I bend the arm and I pull the weight. So this is really, really helpful for understanding how to combine that upper back engagement with the bigger muscles, the lats as well. Now, there are so many different drills that we can work on for upper back strength. There are so many different row variations. I just recommend trying different things to see what you enjoy. I've shared some of my favorites that I use with my clients, but this is not an exhaustive list. There are other drills that you can also work on. And of course, when it comes to actually understanding the position of the straddle when we are upside down, we need to work on this as its own kind of skill too. So I hope that this has been helpful and I hope that you've gained a little bit more understanding around the inverted straddle position, why it's valuable to get really, really strong in and why it needs to be a position that is not overlooked but is actually trained. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and I will see you in the next one.